Alright, well, everybody knows our favorite yellow-skinned family from the 90s, The Simpsons, right? So today I'm going to be taking a look at one of their many games, this time for the Game Boy, Bart Simpson's Escape from Camp Deadly, released by Acclaim in 1991. And so here you can see the title screen, with good music in the background. And this is your main villain here, Iron Fist Burns, and he's the camp counselor. So he's really a tyrant, making sure you have absolutely no fun at Camp Deadly. And you can see the chain gang up there in the background, the little silhouettes with some guy stamping his feet, or I guess he's telling them to march, more likely. When I say march, you'll ask how far. The same goes for your sister. You're happy little punks now, but I'll change that before you leave. Or you won't leave here at all! Ha ha ha! What a jerk. So there we go, let's start our adventure here, and we see Bart, and those billboards that you just saw me jump over, they tell you what the objective of that main level is. So this main one here is capture the flag. You have Lisa up top here, and she'll give you one of your primary weapons, which is a boomerang. And you have a secondary weapon, which I'll show you a little bit later on, and that's a spit wad. So a lot of these other enemies that you're fighting are just other bullies in the camp. You gotta watch out for these bees too. They're really nasty. They can kill you in one hit. So as you're going through the forest, there's all these different tree houses, and this guy, Blindside Bill, you just basically throw the boomerang at his opposite side, and then it hits him when he's not looking, and you get those two little pieces that you saw drop down are pieces of chocolate, which are your life meter. Lisa has a special item for you, which is a Beekeeper Helmet, so that keeps you safe from the bees when you want to get another flag. And as you can see there, I also picked up one of those Krusty the Clown heads, and those are extra lives that you get in the game. So every time you see Lisa, you get 5 boomerangs when she's holding them, and you start out the game with just 2 hits. You initially just get 1 piece of chocolate and 1 extra hit before you die. Branches like this one here, even though it didn't break that time, they will break if you stand on them too long, so you gotta watch out for them. And the first level's really just a warm-up, just like in most games, kind of getting you used to it. This is one of my favorite Game Boy games that I logged a lot of hours on as a kid. Now, this guy here, Rebound Rodney's a lot easier than the first guy, Blindside Bill. I don't know why. He has the same exact weak spot where you just throw it on the other side. But Blindside Bill's really hard because you have to, I don't know, you have to throw it when he's like right in front of you. So here you can see Lisa gives you a football helmet. And this makes you impervious to attacks from the bullies. And you can see I'm going to grab an extra life there. So those are 2 of the power-ups that you can get. And here we go. Now we're going on to lunch break after we finished our first round of Capture the Flag. And I really like the drawing here. This is so typical 90s. All the gross stuff that Bart would hate, of course. Tofu burgers. And with these cafeteria stages, you really have to watch your ammo supply. Of course, you have broccoli too, which nobody wants to eat broccoli, right? And you have to really make sure that you don't waste it on enemies, so you don't have infinite ammo like you would with a boomerang. And also you'll see some of the darker colored enemies that aren't as lightly shaded as the rest of them. And what that means is they're holding a piece of chocolate, so they'll give you an extra hit meter. You can get up to 12, I believe, in total, so you can really have quite a good hit meter build up. And at the end of the stage, for every 5 pieces of food that you throw away, Bart gets an extra piece of chocolate in exchange, because of course he'd rather eat chocolate than eating crab apples or anything gross. And so now we're back to the capture the flag, and your apples are once again, of course, replaced by the boomerang. Now, I will say, Escape from Camp Deadly can be a little tricky. It's not really difficult, but the hitbox detection is kind of poured loose. And also, the enemies that you'll come across, they really jump in at cheap angles. This is Madman Mort that you find in the woods, and you can free him, or you can hurt him with your boomerang. This is the third, and I believe final treehouse that you'll encounter in the forest. Slipshod Sammy, and he just slides back into that trap door. And Lisa will give you another power-up here, which is a nuclear suit. So, in different areas of the game, you can go underground through areas where there would be like nuclear waste and stuff, and this protects you from everything aside from the acid that you see, or the nuclear waste you see dropping from the ceiling. So it protects you from the isotopes and things like that, but not the nuclear waste. Now, these are a huge pain, these killer Hornets. Mainly because two things. They have a fixed range where they'll come in and attack you, but it's also difficult to do what I just did there, which is get your boomerang to fly up at an angle. So once you master that, they're pretty easy. You can just kind of hit them from a fixed distance and they won't hurt you. But if you can't get that shot off right, which is kind of tricky because it's like an up and BA at the same time combination, those Hornets will really give you a hard time. And you'll also have other underground levels which can be tricky at first, which I haven't played this in like 20 years, so it took me a while to remember that you can kill these little ants and spiders with your spitballs, not just with your boomerangs. So here you'll see those are the branches that I told you about that break away, and you have little logs. That's supposed to be water and mutated fish here that you have to jump across. This is actually pretty difficult. It's a lot more difficult than it looks because the jumping mechanic isn't great. So here we go. This is the boss of the first stage, and Nelson Muntz, and he's throwing apples down from the bottom. And if you chose to save Madman Mort, he will come to your aid and hold Nelson at one side, so it makes it a lot easier for you to just go up there and attack him with your boomerang, and you don't have to be dodging his apples all the time. So he takes about, I think about 10, maybe 12 hits max before he finally dies. He actually has a substantial amount of health. And there we go. Who's laughing now, Nelson? And then there you go. It shows that you won the flag capture, and now it's on to dinner. And again, I just love the graphics in the cafeteria levels. You got fried smelts here, but I love like the trays, and this is just so 90s. Like, hey kids, you don't want to eat your vegetables. You don't want to eat liver pizza. That's gross. And the pizza is actually the hardest one out of all this. As you can see up at the top where he's saying, "Eat my shorts, man," that he'll talk every time you get hit. He'll say one of his little catchphrases. And there's Madman Mort there to help us out again with some extra health. And prune ice cream. Gross. And as you can see with these bullies, they're really out to, like, totally kill you. I mean, they're throwing knives and forks, and this is a really unfair stage, honestly, because you have barely any ammo, and the enemies are smart. They know to duck down because you're gonna just fling the food basically straight ahead, and then they'll throw a knife or a fork at you. So this little segue here, we have Lisa and Bart talking about how they really don't like being at Camp Deadly too much. They feel like they've been tricked, and Lisa talks about how she was, you know, looking forward to the nature walks and the bird watching tours and the brochure. And Bart's talking about eating all the hot dogs that he can eat. So Lisa and Bart decide to come up with a plan, and their plan is that they're going to scale Mount Deadly, and if they can scale Mount Deadly, they'll be off campgrounds, and then they'll be free. So that sounds like a pretty good plan, I guess. Not necessarily for 10-year-olds, but hey, it's a video game. So you have Bart here, and this is the what's supposed to be the mountain, and you're scaling the rock wall there. And these guys here are actually campers that got lost on Camp Deadly that decided to live in the mountains and throw boulders. So you have these breakaway platforms and those birds that you saw earlier that try to knock you off. And this is a neat little trick. You have a secret 1-up life in there that you hit with the boomerang. And you have these caves that are a real pain, but I figured out a little trick to avoid them. Because you have to time when you move up and down the ladder, because if you ever lose any of your health, you don't get it again very later on in the level. So it can make levels like this a pain when you only have 2 hits and have to avoid like 5 or 6 bats and move really, really slow. So here you can see the skulls dropping from the ceiling and the skeletons coming by. And this kind of has a really cool Mexican Day of the Dead feel to it, and the skulls just look silly as they're kind of waving, falling back to their graves or whatever, so it's kind of cute, I think. And so you have to really time your ascent up the ladder carefully. And now it's warning you that you're leaving camp property, and there's the security guards making sure that you don't make it off of camp property, because after camp property is the Springfield power plant. So there's Lisa again to give you some more boomerangs here. And so the bullies for right now have just been replaced by the security guards. But like I was saying earlier, Escape from Camp Deadly is a much more difficult game than it seems, because you barely get any health, and the enemies are really, really smart. You can stun them with your spit wads when your boomerang is in motion and you can't get it back, but they know to duck underneath of them. And now here's some bears here that you have to make sure you don't trigger these bear traps, or they will wake up and chase after you. And if they get you, that is going to be a problem. You are definitely dead. And you have to avoid these big campfires here, which really aren't too big of a problem, unless you miscalculate a jump there. The jumping mechanic is really slippery in this, I gotta say, so you gotta watch out for that. So now, this is pretty much right near the end of the game. You have a couple more of these underground radioactive nuclear waste levels with more insects, but this is like radioactive waste and insects, so they're just throwing everything at you. And like with that little ant there, I had a hard time getting over that, because they place it right where you need the jump, and you can't attack it beforehand. So, you know, they're really testing your platforming skills here. Alright, well, everybody knows our favorite yellow-skinned family from the 90s, the Simpsons, right? And so after you make it through the tunnel, you make it to the prison cell where Lisa is being held captive here. And this is the final boss here, where you go up against Iron Fist Burns. And he's really easy to beat, actually, once you figure out the trick. You just have to bounce your boomerang off him at an angle, so that way it bounces up into those 4 lights up in the ceiling. So just getting the right angle can be a little bit tricky, but we got 3 of them out there, 1 more to go. There we go, and the lights go out, but he still chases you, and there's still enemies that you have to avoid through here, which is kind of tricky. And so once you defeated Iron Fist Burns, you climb up the ladder outside to freedom, and you see this generator here, which is tied into the Springfield power plant. And all you have to do next is just flip the switch to the generator, and you see the lights flicker there, and all the lights in the campground go off as you're looking from the top of Camp Deadly. And just walk to your right, and there's your parents, Marge, Maggie, Lisa, and Bart with the camp closed sign, and even a squirrel there to greet you. Like, I don't understand the squirrel. I would figure that it would be their dog, Santa's little helper. But hey, a squirrel decided to join in on the party, so I'm not going to judge. And that's the game. That's Bart Simpson's Escape from Camp Deadly. And overall, it's a pretty mediocre game, but not bad. As far as the terrible trio of Simpsons games that were released on the NES go, as a port for the Game Boy, this is actually a pretty solid game. I would say it's more fun then it is actually a good game. It's just fun and silly to play. It's The Simpsons. It's got, you know, your favorite lines. It's playable. It's not broken. So you can find it pretty cheaply, and I wouldn't say I highly recommend it, but it might be worth picking up. Have fun with it. See what you think. Hey guys, if you like the video that you just watched, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. And if you do the Facebook or Twitter thing, follow me at #KingRetro. See you next time.